afternoon. Thank you very much. I am honored to be the chair of this roundtable. I am pleased to be here as responsible of the main financial newspaper in Spain, EXPANSIÓN. And we have good times to speak about how money can flow in the private-public relationship in cities. Money is not free. We don't have money for everything. Citizens have no money to pay for everything either. And we have here the opportunity to speak about what cities in the world can do, what they are doing, and how we can help them to find maybe the most original idea. We don't have bankers here, but doesn't mind. We'll be able to find a solution. Mr. Markku Markkula, I think I say it right. Yes. He's the president of the European Committee for the Regions. Thanks to be here with us in Barcelona this evening. Ms. Karine Dognin-Sauze. She's the responsible vice president Innovation, Smart City and Digital of Lyon, the metropolitan area of Lyon. Am I right?
Yes, you're right.
Okay, thank you very much to be here too. Mr. Alfonso. He's the managing director, head of international division of FCC Environment, one of the main Spanish conglomerate industrial groups. Thank you to be here with us, Antonio.
Thanks for the invitation.
Mr. Mateo Hernández, he's the chief executive officer of Barcelona Global. He will explain us what is Barcelona Global, one of the main, I have to say, ideas that we had in this city in the last 5 years. Thank you, Mateo. And Mr. Steven Fifita, he arrived from Chicago, a city we all love, I especially love.
Thank you.
So thanks to be here, Mr. Steven Fifita. 1 year ago, it was created one of a great idea, City Digital. He's the executive director. He will explain what this is and what he can teach us from Chicago to us Europeans, right? Mr. Markkula, you are on my right.
Fine.
You have the first word. You have to explain us from your perspective, institutionally perspective from Europe, European Union. What are you doing? What are your plans? What can be done on this relationship? Private companies, municipal, metro governments, how to finance everything we have in our minds to live better in the future. And what do you expect from all these gentlemen and ladies that are on our side?
Giving an easy answer would be that, okay, put the citizens to pay more taxes. But I don't think that is a good answer at all. The EU Committee of the Regions, we are one of the 4 EU institutions. So the ones better known, European Parliament, European Commission, and then naturally European Council. We, the EU Committee of the Regions, we are the body where our members, 350 members, mayors, regional presidents, regional councillors, we come from all the EU member states representing the citizens and representing the regions and city perspective. And that gives us a special role, I think, especially now during these times of financial crisis, still having an effect on the European operations. And that brings a kind of special focus on this issue of our panel. Maybe it's best to start so that today commissioners are much more eager to collaborate with us than they were, let's say, 5 to 10 years ago. Now they know that they need new solutions. We have not in our hands, not the EU instruments, the Horizon Research funding or other fundings, but we have the regions and cities, and they are the ones to make the changes to happen in good collaboration with the industry, with the civic society, with universities. And all of that brings really let's say, so much added value what is needed today. So our role is just to mobilize these resources, but especially we need to look what are the new ways to operate, how to make the desired changes to happen. One of our key messages is that every city, every region needs to increase its own renewal capital based on human capital, but really much more than how to make the desired changes to happen. We have created, and we are creating all the time, some of the new instruments for that, since one of the key elements is that we know in EU policy, so that we have in Europe a lot of new and good high-quality research knowledge, but that's not used enough. So the gap in between latest research knowledge and the real-life practice is too big. We need to find ways how to fill that. And there, again, operating on different new ways. We have a lot of European projects where our members are actively engaged. We have a lot of what we today call European innovation partnerships. We need to learn from those, and we need to move and get, again, mobilizing the activities on what we call kind of bottom-up movement. And there, the key question today is what is the new role of the cities? According to several studies, so the role of cities is increasing while the role of the national member states is going down. And that's why that there's a lot of expectations. And just to say, start our panel with a few kind of examples what is needed today and how we can operate with this. So it's that all the regions are now having close to all their smart specialization strategies. European Union has asked cities to focus on a few priorities. And we are now faced on that these priorities exist. The cities and regions operate now how to organize local collaboration on those. But the next phase is get the political decision makers more enthusiastic about that and start building European partnerships so that we can mobilize these activities.
Examples later? We are on time.
Maybe one additional element, so that here what I'm seeing, good examples here as well, so that now how to integrate digitalization to traditional city urban planning. We have the Open Agile Smart City is a good example of that already. The sign tells there are 61 cities, but it's already today 75 cities from 15 different countries who have engaged themselves to do more collaboration, create these new concepts.
We'll be pleased to listen to the examples later. We are on time. It's 4 minutes for each presentation, and we'll be pleased to hear.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Markkula. This is my job. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Miss Karine Dognin-Sauze, Lyon, beautiful city. We all love to, like Chicago, like Barcelona. Your examples, maybe later, but if you want to explain us, what are your projects, what are your goals for the next years, as we talk about?
Yes, I don't think that the question that is raised about finance is the right one. I prefer to think about how to generate value. And indeed, we all in agreement to think that cities are the perfect place to create value, and a smart city is a great perspective to achieve that. So I just would like to share with you how we have developed our approach in terms of smart city, and how this approach is covering this question of innovation in the field of partnership between public, private, but also with people. So we started our thinking regarding smart city, I will say 8 years ago, with a very simple question. How capturing, how embracing the potential and this new perspective provided by technology in our city development. And I'm not talking about digital or new technology as a proper segment or even as an infrastructure. Our focus was really to understand the impact of digital as a driver for multiple transformation, to a new way of doing, way of living, way of working, way of producing. And from the very beginning, it was crystal clear for us that technology doesn't really matter. Most important for us was how we wanted to live with how it could foster our capacity to innovate and transform our city, to face with current challenges, to deliver a new urban experience, but also how it should transform our local economy to contribute to what we call a new form of growth. Many cities in many countries have today access to the same level of technology, provided sometimes by the same global company or even sometimes by their local company. And it's not enough to do the difference. It's not enough to build up and to provide a vision. And this new technology, if they open new fields for innovation, they need to be very smartly associated to political fundamentals as a city. Is first a combination of culture and population. So what seems crucial for us was to drive our path rather than integrating a standard model of smart city. And I hope that now we're all in agreement that it doesn't make any sense to do that. And precisely, we were looking for a strategy, a vision that will make sense for our city, our community. And this vision is articulating a new form of growth with a lifestyle that is own and a local urban experience that is in alignment with our dweller aspiration, but also that is valid to attract enough other people. So to build up this vision, we looked first at our value, and the first thing that we leverage, something that is part of our DNA, is innovation. That means that we don't just want to transform our city to deliver effective responses to urban, environmental, or social challenges. We also want to leverage the city transformation to produce, concretely, innovation. That means that we have in Lyon a very intense urban development with the creating of new districts, with the regeneration of existing districts. And we have leveraged this urban planning to give room to large-scale projects that go beyond the solution of a unique stakeholder. And by this way, we provide the opportunities to do things together. That means that each of our projects today, and we have 40 different experimentations in place in our city, is a result of a co-construction and cross-expertise from multiple stakeholders that come from very diverse universe. And we also take the risk of experimentation, because experimentation is a good way for private partners to fix business model, also is a go-to-market for startup, and for a big company to be part of an expectation that we have, which is renewing our economic segments for future segments like future energy, like robotic, like clean technology, and so on.
We'll follow on. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup, Karine. Mr. Antonio Alfonso, he represents the private sector, and I'm sure he will tell us about his experience and experience of FCC environment.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I'm glad to be here. Thanks much for the invitation. What I wanted to start talking about is that FCC has been in the cities environment not just for a few years. I think the first time I heard about the smart cities was only a few years ago, but we have been actually supporting the development of cities for more than 100 years now, which is quite a substantial time and gave us quite an interesting experience. As of today, we are serving some 5,000 cities across the globe, which means more than 50 million people on a daily basis. This gives us a great chance to gain the best experiences in places where are really advancing ahead of others, in order to put this into practice in other places which are not yet that advanced in some areas, which we consider a fundamental advantage for our clients. What is interesting in terms of public-private partnerships when we talk about smart cities is that it actually helps a lot, of course, to develop solutions that the cities need. We all know that budgets are limited. We all know that in some cases The technological capabilities of certain cities is also limited, and this is a very good way to actually fill these gaps in reality, depending on the needs of this specific city. We can think of many PPP structures. I think that even the most probably traditional ways, which are the long-term service contracts, are in reality a kind of PPP, right? Private companies are investing on a specific assets that we will use for a relatively long period of time, let's say 8 to 10 years, in order to provide a given service. We have other examples, such as mixed companies, where we invest alongside the cities, and this has been a very good experience for us as well in many countries. And we, of course, have a more infrastructure type of PPP, where we develop an asset, an infrastructure-like asset, and we operate it for a longer period of time, let's say 25 or 30 years, and then we hand it over to the city. So we have many kinds of structures that, depending on the specific needs, on the specific service, and also on the, let's say, the abilities that this city has already developed, and I guess this is something that we will discuss later on, fit better. But anyway, what is clear is that there is a big advantage in the collaboration between cities and private companies in the development of all these services. You mentioned, Martin, that examples will come later, but given the opportunity to be here, I would like to highlight, for instance, the long-term relationship we have with the city of Barcelona, where we have been providing services since FCC was created, as I said, more than 100 years ago. And we all can just go out, walk out to the city and see how it looks like, right? We are proud to think that we are part of that achievement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Antonio. My friend Mateo Hernandez.
Thank you, Martí. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here. There was a time, not really far away from today, that nations were powerful, and there was a president in the States, great president, that said, "Don't wait what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country." Today, we are in a century where everyone says that cities matter, that cities are the important engine. So we should change that question and ask ourselves what we can do for our cities. And to answer that question properly, there's the need for civic platforms to allow citizens to do something for the city. And that's the reason why something we created in Barcelona called Barcelona Global exists, which is a civil platform, private, fully funded by private funds, by people, professionals, lawyers, doctors, architects, business leaders, researchers that want to commit hours, time, talent to improve their city, in this case, Barcelona. And why do they want to do that? Because they want this city to be able to be competitive and to be livable, not only for them, not only for us, but for their kids. So they need to invest on that city, not only money, but talent. And that's why they created something called Barcelona Global, which is a private platform, fully private, where those members try to develop projects in a single mission, which is to make Barcelona a global city. And what does global city means to us? It means becoming a magnet for talent. Because as Markku said, human capital is critical. We call talent to human capital. And as Mayor Bloomberg said once, talent moves capital, attracts capital much more easily and sustainable than capital attracts talent. So there's a group of talent in Barcelona willing to attract talent. And that's our big aim. And these people, what they ask for is for private environments, non-politicized, so independent from political parties, independent from the government, but working hand by hand with the city, with the government. So what do? They develop projects in order to attract talent, to brand the city worldwide, to become ambassadors of the city, to help connecting companies like yours to other initiatives, to connect entrepreneurs with other entrepreneurs, to make things easy for the city. And that's why today private platforms helping the public sphere to improve are important, and that's why we created this thing called Barcelona Global that sometimes copies issues that are created in the States, like Partnership for New York City, or in London, like London First, in Chicago, World Class City as well. So this is something that is growing worldwide today because this is the city, the century of cities.
Thank you very much, Matteo. As you know, in the Middle Ages, the cities were the place where people used to escape to get freedom.
Exactly.
And the bishops were the people who helped them, and they created the artisans, and everything started there. So the history always comes back, right? Mr. Fifita, the experience of Chicago and City Digital.
First of all, thanks for having me. I'm very happy to be here. It's actually interesting that I'm at the end of the introductions because the reason why our organization exists is because of everything that's been mentioned here. I would call the migration to the urban centers and the notion of these urban centers being much more important than just, for instance, commerce. It's now a place where we want to live, work, play. You have the convergence on technology and on the various pillars that exist there. And then cities themselves have become smarter about the notion of developing the capabilities internally so that they can take part in the technology solutions that are developed on their behalf. So for us at City Digital, to give a little bit of a background of who we are, we're a privately funded entity. We were founded in early 2015. Our founding members are Microsoft, Accenture, Tyco, Siemens, and a large US utility called ComEd. The key objective of why we were brought together is we run elements of an accelerator and elements of a venture stage gate model where the customer is the city and the expectation for deployment is the city as a canvas. And so we believe in tech-led solutions. The solutions that we focus on for smart city leverage Internet of Things, large data analytics, and advanced computing. The verticals that we focus on in the city are pretty much across the board. So we look at water, we look at transportation, we look at above and below built environment, so things below grade as well as smart buildings, and then finally energy. And so therefore, the types of challenges that we tackle with the cities are very complex by definition, and require a number of multiple players. And so we also have engineers, our engineering firms as part of our membership. We bring in university as well as government up front early in the collaboration phase. So the points mentioned here today are exactly the space that we fill, and we are launching live. We launched 4 new projects in 2015, and we have 4 more coming in 2016. A lot of this is built on the fact that I grew up in the OEM space at companies like HP and Cisco. A lot of great technology has been developed for smart city applications. We've seen a lot of that actually out in the pavilion. So our belief is that there's so many great technologies, everything from devices, analytics platforms, storage, web-based delivery systems, that we can actually start now with the customer and truly do a customer-driven design process, where our belief is that within our own consortium and or the startup community, the solutions exist for what we're looking to try to solve for. So we can really look at very complex problems, let the city define it, being that they're going to be the end user and the takeout, and act as the proxy for us as citizens, right? So this notion of live, work, play, that the city, again, is the best proxy and does actually act as the advocate for us as end users, as citizens. So where we've seen a lot of great success then is not only do the OEMs or the technology developers get a first look at what the solution should look like, there also is a path to the piloting process where it's controlled and staged access. So And I know we're talking a little bit about PPPs as well as, and this point is a little bit more around procurement. But because technology requires a piloting exercise, and Antonio, we were talking about this before, where in a lot of cases, when you go to RFP, this technology needs to be relatively stable. So again, involving the city early has been a very big success for us, and making them part of the accelerator. So again, thanks for having us here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fifita. Mr. Markkula, do cities in Europe work together enough? Do they collaborate enough, even to find finance together? Is this something we have to dream about?
There's definitely still much to do. Too much, it's not only the cities, but elsewhere as well. So people are in their own box, in their own silos. We know that from many of the activities, and it's a good example. You refer this to the cities because cities try too much to solve the challenges, the problems with their own knowledge. It's the city council members talking most often too much kind of inward looking instead of building new collaborative activities. And especially when we link this to the financing. So what we, the Committee of the Region, we are now calling for is the kind of pioneering cities. Cities who would like to develop the concepts for this European collaboration and use that to be kind of role models for the others. We need different size of cities, so every city, every region can be a pioneer. It's definitely different if you are a small city in Poland or Slovakia compared to the Netherlands, Sweden or Finland. But all of those we do need, and there we need to develop the new forms. That's why we very much call for societal innovations, not only, let's say, social innovations, which are good, so that's kind of getting civil sector to move on, third sector to move on, but we need to be ready for different structural changes as well and do this more in collaboration with the private. Maybe just to add the concrete thing at the moment is where do we get the new jobs, and the right answer coming from youth, young digital generation is really that they want to take more action on their own. And that's natural since they've seen that there is not that many jobs kind of traditional go to that company and then after 40 years retire from the very same company. So they need to do that, and that's why we have this kind of change in the mindset towards startups and entrepreneurship.
Karine, you mentioned you want to talk about examples of Lyon. Yeah. I think it's a good opportunity.
And just before that, I would like to mention that the first step forward that we did was to change our mindset and also to change the mindset of our community. I mean also the population. Educate the population to innovation and make sure that they are exposed to innovation on a daily basis. The result of that is that today the Métropole of Lyon as a local authority is like a go-between between partners, more an actor, a player that is an enabler to fuel innovative projects. And we focus all our resources, human resources, financial resources, to provide to local players the right condition to innovate. And it doesn't require so much money because it's about giving access to valuable data. It's about user panels, so prime access to the public spaces, for example. It's this kind of things. So a good illustration of what we did is that we have prototyped a next generation living lab that is called Tuba. With this objective to speed up the transformation of data, public and private data, not just public data, into innovative services. So we help the implementation of this living lab at the right location, at the right place in the city, to secure an easy access to experimentation. But we entrusted private for the governance and also to finance the project. So today, this Living Lab is working extremely well because it's a good advantage for private to test early in advance solution directly with the final users, to also find new alliances that can make the difference to enhance the solution, the primary solution. And it's also an area where we have like a platform between university that is looking for a better transfer of research results, startup, competitiveness clusters, and also big group. It works really well. We have like up to date 20 projects, 25 projects that come out from this tool, for example.
Okay, thank you very much. Mateu, since Barcelona Global was created, Barcelona has had 3 different governments. One socialist, the other nationalist becoming independentist, and now we don't know what is really. I don't know if it's left wing or whatever. Long term is very important in order to make big projects. How the civil society can work together with these different political parties, different programs, different objectives. And then I would also like to know, in the case of Chicago, how do you do it, although it is different, because Chicago has not, you haven't had so many changes, I think. And then if Antonio wants to explain us how to cope, how to work with the politicians that work in every city. Mateu.
So we have had, as you mentioned, 3 mayors.
Excuse me, I don't know if the organization can do something, because I apologize, there's a lot of people talking and it's a little annoying on the other side. Yes, I know, but it's difficult to follow up. I don't know if they can.
Louder, maybe.
It's very loud, yes. I'm sorry, apologize.
So we did have 3 different mayors, fully, as Martí was saying, fully different. And with the 2 previous, we have had an excellent relation, and we hope or wish to have an excellent relation with the current one. And the key element for that is that we are normal citizens thinking long term, acting short term, but in a long-term perspective, in a calendar where we don't have a 4 years mandate schedule, so we look long term, and we know that cities are a shared project. Cities are not governed by someone, are built by many, and that's very important. If you understand that, then things go easily. And long-term is important, and long-term projects allow organizations like ours to be there, because we can think long-term. And that's because most of our projects are long-term based. Our mission to make Barcelona a global city is a long-term project. Will never end. We'll keep going. Even you achieve the small objectives, we'll keep going. So there's a need for a good relation with the government, and the experience of others says that when that government doesn't want to have that good relation that is needed, the city keeps going, because the city is truly a shared project. And when you have citizens committed with that, then things go easily. And in the States, there's plenty of experiences where there's a failure in government, but the city keeps going. And that's very important. But our aim is to really be engaged with those cities, with those governments. Are important.
Stephen, your case.
Sure.
Chicago.
In the city of Chicago, Mayor Rahm Emanuel, which is the important piece, is this notion of vision. So, you mentioned sort of visionary or pioneering cities that are taking a lead. It really starts at the top, right? So innovation, whether it's at a city or in a corporation, or even in a nonprofit, the direction and support needs to start from the top to allow those that are to allow the permission to experiment, to allow the permission to collaborate with groups that you traditionally don't collaborate with. And so that, coupled with the Department of Innovation and Technology, which is headed up by the Chief Innovation Officer of Chicago. They wrote a technology roadmap in 2013 that opened up the data of Chicago for development, for co-development. Also opened up the city of Chicago, which is what we use, literally the physical assets to use the city of Chicago as a test bed. So that level of collaboration, that level of vision and support and commitment, we found to be extremely successful, given that we are really a corporate venture-based model developing municipal solutions. So for us, it's the notion of commitment and collaboration has been very successful, and hopefully that is to continue. I would also agree that the one piece that's interesting about Chicago, and you see this in New York, you see this in San Francisco as well, the citizenship, so that the citizens are ready to be digitized, if you will. Most of us are connected, we all have cell phones, so this notion of embracing digital assets within your city and understanding the value there has also been something that will kind of live beyond sort of the notion of who's leading the city at the time.
Mm-hmm. Matteo wants to add.
Let me put an example of Barcelona. Many of you will be visiting Barcelona these days, I guess, and you will be visiting some of the big issues in Barcelona. Maybe you will be visiting the Sagrada Familia, the Parc Güell, the Football Club Barcelona, the Prado de la Música, the Liceo, even the Cathedral, Santa Maria al Mar. You have to know that all those big, fantastic buildings were not built by a king, or were not built by a pope, or were not built by a president of La République. They were built and paid by the civil society. So this is a real example that the civil society is who's really building the city, together with the government. But who goes first long term? And when you see this city, you see that what makes this city unique, and I feel it's unique, is what the civil society has done in the past. So we expect that in the future, we need the civil society to have the space, and the government has to provide that space to build something good for the city.
Thank you, Matteo. Antonio, your experience all over Europe, what examples can you give us about?
Okay.
If you can say the good ones, they will be welcome. If you want to say the bad ones without mentioning the cities, you are also welcome.
All good ones for today. No, seriously speaking, you were asking before about how much do cities collaborate.
Yes.
And we can argue that maybe not enough in many cases. Well, I actually do have a few good examples of collaborations on cities who were not forced and simply decided to join forces with neighboring cities in order to develop their projects. We have been, for instance, awarded to develop an incineration plant for the cities of Edinburgh and Midlothian in Scotland, in the UK, which is a very interesting case because these two cities realized, these are neighbor cities, they realized that they didn't have enough scale on their own to develop such a project, but there was a lot of political will because they wanted to really develop this project, to have a better, more environmentally friendly, let's say, disposal of their waste. They wanted to generate electricity for the city. They wanted to develop a new district heating system for the new developments of the outskirts of the city. And they joined forces to develop this project. We think this is a very good example because on an isolated way, they would not have been able to achieve that. And we have some others in the UK, for instance, where cities and counties as well have been very proactive in and I would say entrepreneurial in just talking to others and agreeing on such developments. The other questions question you made about political change, I must say that political change is something we cope with, of course, on a daily basis. It's part of democracy, and that's fine. What is important for companies to invest in long-term projects is to feel the stability of the regulatory framework and the institutional reliability. I think that if tomorrow I am not here in FCC and somebody comes to my position, nobody will even think that this person will decide to unilaterally cancel contracts that we have with cities, right? However, we sometimes listen to politicians in debates and even in public speeches talking about unilateral cancellations of contracts. This is probably not the best way to attract talent, to attract investments, and so on. So it's probably something to be considered.
If you want to add.
I would definitely like to add to that, so these kind of concrete cases, because always for this collaboration, it's between people. So you need to build this kind of both the trust, the kind of joint commitment that I want to help you, give you this, and then your role is something that you have been, since you have been collaborating with me for a long time. So then we start changing our own culture for doing more things together. And that's crucial. And I take an example of that, so that when we move now on the modern urban planning, one of my hats is I'm the chair of our own Expo city, chair of the planning board. So there every second week we go through on some of the new changes, what we want to make to happen. But we are actually challenging both the companies as well the citizens to be part of this change process. Big investment has been just recently, we'll get that part of that investment done next year when we open the metro subway extension from downtown Helsinki to the west. That means we have invested our city, Helsinki city money and the government's money, about 1 billion euros. But the key point is not that billion, but it's 10 billion new urban development around that, because of the industry and the normal housing, residence buildings see that this is a good location. And then the next 10 billion euro, because that starts new businesses. It's really a good location for the young generation startup activities. We are already talking about the kind of startup village around the Aalto University, kind of a gardening issue there. So this is really concrete, that we need to see that the city does not need to do everything themselves, but challenge the others.
Karine?
No, I just wanted to add that we need a consolidated vision. It cannot be an addition of willing to drive the future of a city. We need a consolidated vision. Obviously, we need to have a long view and to prepare the future. But what we experience today is that we also need to stay agile, flexible, to let empty spaces sometime, just to make sure that we can have something that happens spontaneously, that is not really driven, planned in advance, and so on. It's also the reality of a city. And a city is also a combination of very various people. And we have to deal with this paradox. You cannot just sometimes take one direction. We need to make everyone happy, not just, for example, people that love technology. You also have people that have different aspirations. So it's a very complex ecosystem, a city, that is not just so simple than what we sometimes would like to describe. And it's why we have to obviously work together, things together, but stay incredibly open to this flexibility that is required much more even now than we used to know in the past, because we are under a phenomenon that is very clear, acceleration of everything. And even if we want to think in advance and have a clear view on what can happen, we're just unable to do that. No one can do that. So we need to manage that and sometimes make, short-term choice, but keep open the system.
I just wanted to build on this point of collaboration and it being so very important, and the notion of flexibility. So, for instance, what we're seeing is beyond just co-design and co-development of the technology, we're now having to think over what does shared intellectual property look like? What does shared revenue streams look like between city and private and startups? And the city doesn't necessarily always have to be the end-paying customer. They may be the using customer. Like LinkedIn is a great example where we as end users of LinkedIn are not necessarily paying for the platform. Really, the sort of the HR and recruitment community are really paying for that platform. Similarly, the city doesn't always have to operate the platform either. So this notion of being very flexible and collaborative, because it's not just simply call it the procurement process of bringing something in that the city deploys. It's a long-term relationship. It has to evolve. You're talking about more things than simply just extracting financial value. And so they're having that open dialogue component where you're talking about very difficult elements. And it's arguably the sustainability of a city, right? Is it if a city can fund itself in alternate methods, it reduces the burden on us as citizens. It also reduces the pressure for those that are running the city.
Mr. Markkula.
Yep.
If you have a dream, what would you like to change if you only have one choice? For the day after tomorrow, not for tomorrow. After what we've been listening.
I would change very much again the mentality that people would be much more eager to move on experimenting, kind of piloting, not just planning. Because now we can share the good plans, good documented documents. So we need to be the study of those, but then start implementing. And if we do that in parallel with the other cities, so then it does not matter that much if I fail or make a bit mistake or take more risk, because the other city, my colleagues there operating, they get the information of my exercise and link that to what they are doing. So do it more in this kind of co-creation process. Many parallel activities, not managed in a traditional management controlling and so on, but more like an orchestrating, letting people to do and act.
Let me ask you something. It's unfortunately that I have to make this question today after what has happened in Paris last Friday.
Yep.
Is the security issue probably an opportunity to have more collaboration? You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
It is an opportunity for cities, not only over Europe, but over the civilized world, to be more helpful, to find new resources, to see how can we help us together.
Yeah. At least already what we see, it kind of unites people as well. So people are seeing this really as a threat. So we need to do more together, we need to share. But what we saw, I link that to the other kind of burning issue, the refugees. Because what we saw there about, let's say, a month ago, 1.5 months ago, when the governments were not able to tackle and not to decide what to do, then a lot of the people voluntarily started to do humanitarian issues. So we will share this, we will do this. And now what we have seen going on, very much new developments with the smartphones, etc., how to do the learning of the languages with that. So these kind of new concepts are moving much faster than they used to do. So these kind of crisis situations are always an opportunity as well. So we need to stop more, we need to take them in the decision making as well. So what comes out of that? What are the new options for increasing the security as well? So I'm strongly against so that we would start putting more walls or border controls, but maybe sometimes we need to do something, stop for a while, and then find a better solution to what we've been able to achieve.
Thank you. We have a few minutes for questions. If some of you in the audience would like to make some question, please. There's one hand raised on my right. Go on, please.
Thank you.
If you can introduce yourself, we'd love to know who you are.
The introduction is going to be very long. I don't want to take your time. My name is Svi Weinstein. I'm from Israel. And to introduce myself, I'm a member in one of the EU committees dealing with smart cities. The title is People-Friendly Cities in a Data-Rich World, which tries to make the combination between citizen, quality of life, and technology.
Great. Your question.
It's not a question, it's maybe a remark. I think what you call the PPP have to be changed a little bit and to add another letter, the letter C. It should be public, private, and citizen participation. You were talking a lot on high level of government, European Commission, governments, city leadership, but you omitted the main customer view, which are the citizens. Some of you mentioned the name citizens, but I didn't hear a real action or a program or something that connect the real citizens, even in the neighborhood or poor neighborhoods, to the decision-making processes of the city or the government to help them. Technology doesn't help all population. I mean, sometimes it has also bad impacts. And I wonder where are the citizens, I mean, in each of your countries or companies that you represent?
I think one of the words more mentioned in this panel have been citizens. The cities are built by many, civil society. We have to hear the people, values, and I think it has been very clear that we, the citizens, have a lot to say about the future of our citizens. I don't know if somebody wants to add something else before closing, but I think we have also talked about transparency, necessity of collaborating, openness. I don't know, Stephen, you are watching, staring at me, but
no, I would agree.
Well,
Well, coming at it from a technology development standpoint, the users are the key drivers of what we end up developing. You know, our heaviest level of collaborations with the city, in that they act as a proxy for the citizens or the end users. But even as we do research around what technology to develop, what features that go into that technology, we understand that adoption is driven by the end user's understanding of the platform and a recognized kind of avenue to value. So for us, that's actually a very, very key piece for us.
Thank you very much. I don't know, one more word and we are closing because I've been told to close.
I would say that your remark is sad for me because it's a failure of what I tried to express. What I tried to express is that citizens are the makers of cities and that we have to create platforms for them to be part and to do something for the city. So to first ask themselves what they can do for the city and then do it. So if I didn't express myself correctly, apologize.
Thank you very much, all of you. I think it has been an optimistic vision of all we can do. We cannot be allowed to be pessimistic. We have to create your ideas to make them work together, collaborate, and I thank you also the audience and all of you. We are in a big city. Barcelona is not the same thing as it was 30, 35 years ago. I think we've had great majors, we have a great society, we have great citizens in this city, like in many other cities in the world.
And great companies, remember.
And great companies. Thank you very much for the appreciation, Antonio.
Estás en Barcelona?